Morning, guys. Just getting up and around here, heading to Superior, Montana this morning. Got to go over there and pick up some elk meat from my 2017 bull I had dropped off over there. Made some sausage, pepper sticks, pepperoni, jalapeno cheese dogs, well, bratwurst. So kind of excited to get over there and check that out. I'm gonna kind of go over some of these solo hunting questions because I'm gonna try to make this kind of a short Q&A. First one, Robert Robledo. Sorry if I slay this. What's some of your solo hunting tactics for elk? I'm solo hunting most of the time, and I have never had any luck getting them to come in. Solo hunting, you have to kind of slow the game down a little bit of calling an elk. You have to kind of try to, if you've ever seen the Sherlock Holmes movie where in his mind he kind of tries to see out the scenario right before he punches the guy, or whatever's going to happen in the in the action scene. You have to kind of try to do that with the elk hunting. You have to kind of, once you get your bull bugling, you have to kind of think it out, the process. The bull's over there. I'm going to have to cross a ridge or a draw or whatever, get over there, get set up. He's probably going to come this way. The wind is going this way. You have to kind of predict which way the bull's going to come, and you have to kind of set yourself up in the right spot to where you have the wind to your advantage, and you have his sight line in your advantage too, where he's going to have to come the whole way to see you, and he has a short visibility. You set up to where he's going to have to come in super close, but you have a shooting lane. What I like to do a lot is if there's like little ridges, I like to set it up to where he has to come up over the little ridge, because that's pretty typical of elk. They'll come to the top of a ridge and they'll just stick their head up to where they can just see over the ridge to see you. So you need to set up to where you can shoot to where he's going to stand on the just below the other side of the crest of the ridge. You have to be able to shoot him when he comes up to look at you. So sometimes when I'm on the back side of the ridge, I'll bugle, cow call, I'll move up right to the edge of the crest of the ridge to where I can see him when he comes in, and he'll expose himself. It's just you have to really pay attention to your setups, and you have to play it very smart. And sometimes you have to, and this is elk hunting even with a partner, sometimes you have to maybe push pause and think, I'm not ready to call him in right here because this ain't gonna work. Hey Chris, this isn't gonna work right here. So you may have to push pause a minute, move ahead, and then pick the game back up. So try to always stack the odds in your favor. Okay, here's one. This is from Josh O'Neill. He says, my question is about calling bulls and while hunting solo. What is the best setup to get that bull inside 50 or 60 yards? Do you find it easier to call a bull downhill, or is it better to be on his level? And also, do you ever use decoys while hunting solo? I live in Central Oregon, where it is fairly open country, so getting bulls in close is sometimes challenging. Thanks for all the awesome content. Love watching you guys hunt. Hey, thanks, Josh. So there again, we got to get back to setups. That 50-60 yard mark, especially if you're hunting in open country, you have to get set up to where that bull has to get within 40, 50, 60 yards to see where the calling is coming from. If he can see 100 yards across some open timber or an open meadow or something, they generally, sometimes, most of the time, they'll hold up right at the edge of that, and they'll kind of look around trying to see where that other bull is, because they want a visual. A lot of times they're not scared, but that's just the nature of bull elk when they fight. When they get together, they want to check each other out. If you watch a lot of elk videos, like where elk are just doing their thing, they'll come together, they'll do this parallel march next to each other, and they'll just kind of look at each other out of the corner of their eye, size each other up to see if they really want to fight or not. So first they want to make that initial contact if they haven't been pressured by humans. But then once they see an elk over there, then they'll come. So decoy use is good. I've used it a little bit. Seems like when it works great. When it doesn't work at all. 60% of the time, it works every time. But anyway, yeah, a decoy could work out. I usually hunt a lot of heavier timber stuff, so decoys are a little tougher to make work. But in that open stuff, you don't want to just put it right out in the open though. You want to kind of put it where they can just see bits and pieces, and maybe the elk, part of the elk head and stuff, to where they're like, oh, I kind of see an elk, and they have to come closer to get a good visual on that thing. So anyway, set up where they have to come to see you, to make that visual contact at a closer range, and you'll do a lot better with that. Jim Huntsman, he says, here he asks, most of the elk hunting videos show great teamwork. My question is, I hunt solo 99.9999% of the time. How does hunting solo change the way you call? How do you negotiate calling and gearing up for the setup shot? Here's the let me just kind of give a rundown of like when I hear a bull elk bugling when I'm by myself. So basically, I hear a bull bugle. I wait for 2 or 3 bugles. I want to hear how pissed off he is. But I'm going to check his temperature. And if he's answering, you know, really well, then I'm going after him. So I grab my stuff, I go. But most of the time between the first initial contact and going to the bull, I don't do a lot of calling in between, as long as I kind of know where he's at. So once I get over close, I might do a couple test calls just to make sure he hasn't moved off somewhere. Because sometimes once you get him fired up, you can kind of hear him calling as you're moving to him. So you want to listen to see where he's at. So you want to get pretty close. You know, under 200 yards, I prefer it within 100 yards of that bull. I want to give him just a few calls just to see where he's at. So maybe it's just a few cow calls. I'm waiting for a reply. And if he's pretty close when he replies, a lot of times I will just hammer him with a big old challenge bugle, and then see where that goes. A lot of times that really pisses him off, and they start coming your way. And he may come part way and then start raking. That's when I want to start raking. He rakes, I rake. When he bugles, I cut him off again. As I'm raking, I'll throw out a couple little cow calls. I don't want to go crazy with them, but I want to let him know that there's a reason to fight over here. There's some cows, but I want to key in on his anger, not really his urge to breed. So I want to get him worked up, and raking really does that a lot. So don't ever forget to rake. That's like an awesome little thing to do to get him wound up. So eventually, a lot of times they'll after raking and getting themselves worked up, they'll come in, and at that point you will have wanted to make sure you've already got your setup established. Let's say you can hear him popping brush, and you can hear him coming. At that point, I go quiet. I don't bugle. I don't cow call. I don't break brush. I just go quiet, and I stand motionless. You can't move around a lot. You just have to be motionless, and you just kind of let them come and seek and find you. If they hold up on the way there, sometimes I'll cut my hand and make a couple little cow calls over my shoulder, or I'll take my bugle tube, aim it at opposite direction, whichever, this way behind me or that way behind me. I'll cover it with my gloved hand, and I'll bugle and see if that will kind of make them come this way a little bit, because you don't want them coming straight on. You know, for a frontal shot, I prefer that. I just prefer a broadside shot. And typically they'll come in and they'll kind of veer off, looking for that last little cow call, last little bugle they heard. There's been a lot of questions, and how aggressive do you get when that bull hangs up? Well, you got to just kind of play it. How aggressive was he before he hung up? If he's still pretty wound up, if he's standing there bugling a lot and ripping and tearing, but he just won't show himself, that's when, and I feel like it's been a stalemate for a while. I feel like, okay, I've got to make something happen. So I'll move up, and I'll scream a huge challenge bugle. I might do the bark scream, and some chuckles, and then I'll move up. And I don't worry about being quiet at this point. This time, I want him to think a bull elk is coming to fight. And a lot of times, you moving up 20 yards will give enough show of faith to him that he's like, okay, he's going to show himself, I'm going to show myself. So he'll pop out. And a lot of times they'll come out at a broadside angle to check you out, or he'll just start coming in. A lot of times they'll be coming frontal, coming in, and then all of a sudden, right at the last 5 yards, they'll kind of veer off, and you can get that broadside shot. Here's a good one. Alan Schenkel, 19, says, what leaves and goes in your pack when you're backpacking or solo hunting compared to hunting with a partner in the backcountry? So typically I do day hunts, day trips when I'm solo hunting, and even with my partners. This year in Colorado with the Born and Raised guys, I did a bivvy hunt, which that was my first time. I do a spike hunt every now and then, but I really prefer to do day trips. That way I keep my options open. I can go to plan A, and if plan A doesn't work out, plan B, C, D, E, all the way down to Z, and I want to stay mobile. And what goes in my pack isn't really too much different than goes in my pack when I'm hunting with friends or if I'm hunting by myself. I want to make sure I have meat bags. I want to make sure I have a couple knives. I want to make sure I have headlamp. I want to make sure I have an extra headlamp or flashlight. I want to make sure I got batteries. I want to make sure I have food. Always food and always water. Enough for the day, and then a little extra in case you kill one right before dark. You'll have enough food and energy to get the first load packed out. I always have a GPS. I usually carry two. I carry my phone loaded with the onX app on there for my GPS, and also I carry a Garmin with an onX chip in it for the state I'm in. That way I've got double in case one fails. I've got the other one. So sometimes a little different point of view of the different mapping. Like on the phone, the mapping looks different than it does on my GPS. Sometimes a little different point of view kind of gives you a better idea of what kind of terrain you're not going to navigate. So I like that feature. Always, have a rangefinder. Always have elk calls. I don't leave the truck without at least 3 reeds in my person, and that's usually all I carry. I want the one that I've been using that's working good. I want one that's been broken a little bit, and then I want one that's brand new. I don't anticipate wearing out a bunch of reeds, but you never know. And then I have dropped them before and lost them in the brush, and so I want to make sure I have elk calls when I'm out there. So anyway, gear doesn't change too much. I have a tiny bit of first aid stuff, and I'm going to get better about that because as you get seen on Destination Elk this year, Dave Brinker took a broadhead to the calf, and that was a pretty scary situation. And thank God he had friends with him. Thank God they had enough training or ideas to get his bleeding stopped and enough equipment to do that. It looked like they might have needed some extra equipment, and I definitely know I do. So my first aid kit's going to grow next year for sure. Make sure that if something bad does happen, I can stop the bleeding. And that's a pretty good point. When you're by yourself, you have to kind of play it pretty safe. I mean, you can't chicken out and not go after bulls, but you have to play it safe. You have to be smart. You can't take risks, Maybe instead of going over some nasty windfall where you might slip and fall and hurt yourself, maybe go around it. Instead of taking off down over a cliff, maybe go down and around and get around it a little better. Just don't take those chances where you might get hurt, because you're by yourself and it's a long crawl out of there if you can crawl. So when you're and here's one that gets a lot of people. Once they get an elk down, they start skinning this thing out, or they start cutting the meat up. And I was watching a video the other day, and the guy was skinning the bull, and he had his knife, and he was pulling right towards him. And when you're pulling towards you, when you're on your knees or whatever, or crouched down, you're pulling right towards your groin, right towards your femoral artery. That is a huge no-no. You just can't do it. Whether you got friends or not, you just cannot do that. You take the time. Always cut away from yourself. Always. That means getting in a weird angle, precarious angle to stand or crouch because it's on a hillside. It doesn't matter. You have to make that effort and take that extra time to make the cuts away from you. That way you don't end up with a knife in the leg, or worse, in the femoral artery, bled out, because chances are you may not survive that. And cutting your fingers and stuff, just be smart. I was pretty proud of myself on both my solo hunts this year. The first one I didn't cut myself at all. The second one I cut my thumb just barely, and I got in a hurry, and that's what happens. You get in a hurry and you make that extra cut and you cut yourself, but it was just a tiny nick. So I was pretty proud of myself that I didn't cut myself a lot. So that's number one. Safety's number one. And then also, when you're by yourself, you have to make the most of your energy and make the most efficient way to extract an elk. That's why I use the pack that I use. I use an Exo Mountain Gear K2 2000 when I'm doing solo day trips. That way, as soon as I kill an elk, the first trip out, I pack and meat. I don't want to have to make an extra trip. I'm already there. I'm packing meat out the first trip. Okay, guys, I wanted to try to keep this as short as I could. I gotta head to Montana, so hope there was some good information for you. If you like it, like it. If you have some other tips to share with other hunters, please let us know and put those in the comments below. And if you like my channel, tell your friends and subscribe. That way you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later, guys.